Are you ready to become awesomer? Hello everyone, my name is Umar Hamid. I'm your host on the No Limit Selling podcast, where industry leaders share their tips, strategy, and advice on how you can become better, stronger, faster. Just before we get started, I've got a question for you. Do you have a negative voice inside your head? We all do, right? I'm going to help you remove that voice in under 30 days guaranteed. Not only remove it, but transform it. So instead of the voice that sabotages you, there's one that propels you to much higher levels of performance and success. There's a link in the show notes. Click on it to find out more. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Today I have Jay Rooke, and Jay's famous for jaywalking, helping people go on these 90-minute walks in nature and let strategy and life bubble up. And it's really amazing when you do this in a setting, like you're in my office, on my couch, and we're talking. It's a different experience than when you're out in nature. So Jay, I love what you do. Welcome to the show.
Umar, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Brilliant. One of my highlights was I got to go to Rio de Janeiro and do a presentation on neuro-linguistic programming. It was like the World Congress. They have it every 2 years. Some of my mentors were going to be there. So it was like, don't screw up. And what I was talking about was, the quantum field, like we're all connected with it. And one of the examples I gave was, sometimes working with clients in nature, like I'm working on with someone, it's about creativity, and out of the blue, this Disney quality dog comes up behind this person and starts frolicking around as we're talking about creativity here. He can't see it. I can. And I was just talking about, how if you're in nature, shit shows up to kind of validate what you're talking about. And as I was doing that, I swear to God, I did not do this and I do not have this power, but a giant monarch butterfly came and started flying around the center of the room. They thought it was me, but it was just happenstance, but I took the credit.
All day.
So your thoughts on that? When you take people out in nature, does nature show up in a way that kind of helps that conversation along with that understanding?
I think it does. And I think where it's most helpful is as many of us are trying to crack new things on personal development or solve those business problems that we can't get our head around, we get so stuck in our mind space. And like you said, hey, I'm sitting here in my office and it has this theme and this energy. And I find that being in nature helps individuals to almost get out of their own way. It takes their visual attention somewhere else. And as we all know, when's the last time you went for a walk and felt worse? And so there's that connection to nature that people start to get where I think they get a cleaner access to themselves.
Brilliant. And I happen to be like a pretty decent hypnotist. And in hypnosis, they have this thing called utilization, that if an alarm bell happened to go off as you've got somebody in trance. And so, Jay, sometimes it can be alarming. And you just say that, it kind of validates this thing. And it's like, you did it. So once I was out in nature with a client and we were talking about, letting go of the past, and it started to rain. And as this issue washes away from your body, and sometimes it's kind of fun to do that, but it also adds to because I suspect for you, and I don't want to project anything, is that you are of service of the people that are taking this walk with you. Like sometimes you may have the answers, but sometimes it's just being with them and asking really good questions.
Yes. And
which is really tough for consultants to do, because most of the time, we want to tell people shit.
Right. Totally. Just sitting there, shut the hell up, like you said. And I think one of the things, it's like a third teammate for me, where nature's serving as a muse. And like you said, doing some of that work that I'm holding the space for more than actually executing at that moment. And the beauty of it is that everybody hears or sees what they need to see for themselves. And so you're talking about how those animals would randomly show up. And every time I go for a walk, it's something, whether it's a bird or a rabbit or whatever it might be, and asking an individual, hey, what does that mean to you? Or what's the significance in that? And it allows them to kind of break out of their traditional loop thought pattern and crack into something new. And so for me, turkey vulture could mean one thing, but to somebody else, it might be, oh, wow, no, my grandfather always talked to me about those and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden that breakthrough comes in and we're off and running.
Yeah, it's almost like we need permission to let go of our intellect. And sometimes being out in nature is like, oh, look over there. And it just gets you away from that, because all too often we're trying to crack the code. And the best way to do it is to just tighten the pressure. And that's the worst way to do it. But that's how we're trained. And taking people out in nature or just asking them a brilliant question allows them to proceed. So I'll give you a good example. Sometimes You have these books that are like dream books. I've never read one, but I suspect this is what it's like. If you see water in a dream, it means
Yeah,
emotions.
right.
And so I think at the one level, yeah, maybe true, but a lot of times it's kind of bullshit because it's like, Jay, today, right now, talking to me, if you had a dream and water was in it, and I would say, what does that mean to you? And you might say it means X. But a week from now, in that particular mental state that you happen to be in, when I ask you, what does that water mean to you? And you'd say, oh, it means something else. And I think we get to be the best judges of meaning of what's going on around us. And sometimes we're not, and we got somebody like Jay helping us. But if you just go with this always means this, then I think you box yourself in.
1,000,000%. And I think one of the challenges in business is we're so often scanning the horizon to try to figure out what's wrong. What do we need to fix? What calamity do we try to prevent next? And then we get out in nature and we realize nature makes no mistakes. And everything is at perfect stasis in nature. And we can look at those types of things. I think we've all seen a tree that perhaps grew sideways for a while in order to get to the light and then made its way up. And we can see those beautiful moments in struggle and adaptation and kind of see the beauty in ourselves as well.
Brilliant. And I love this field of biomimicry. It like turns me on. It's like, how do ants find stuff? And it's like, why don't we build databases that do the same thing? And all of a sudden they're more efficient. They don't make any sense, but the results are spectacular. And so I think those scientists and just thinkers looking at nature to figure out, wow, how does nature do it? And then can we utilize that in the pursuits that men have?
Yes. Beautiful. I agree.
So one of the things we were talking about before we came on stage was that intersection of being an entrepreneur, kind of our mindset and that spiritual side of who we are. So tell me about that. How do you think they intersect, and what does that really mean for individuals, for entrepreneurs, and moms that are trying to guide their 4-year-olds to understand life better?
Right. Yes, exactly. I think for many of us, whatever we're doing is more than just a job. And so trying to figure out what that answer is for each of us. And for some, it might be engage in a creative pursuit, or they like to use their intellect and are great at numbers, or whatever that might be. But for many, it's some connection to their spiritual evolution and trying to connect to the bigger picture. And, hey, why am I here? And what's my purpose here? And I find that when we can infuse our work with that purpose and understanding, we avoid burnout. We make the right decisions for the right reasons so much more effectively. And it's kind of like we're driving a car blindfolded when we're not connected to that. We're getting triggered and motivated by things that aren't really serving our highest good. And so when we can bring those into alignment, everything pops for the individual from how it feels on the inside, but also they show up differently. People just see folks when they're aligned like that grace and ease they bring to the world.
Absolutely. I'm just going to hold this up to the camera, which no one will be able to read. This is a team, and it says, we are committed and resourceful explorers. It's an IT team. And the gentleman that runs this company was ready to kind of leave the company. It's like, I've done this for 8 years. What's the point? And one of the first things we ended up doing was helping him uncover his purpose in life. And his purpose was to be a committed and resourceful explorer. And when he went home to his high school sweetheart, they'd been married for 20 years. Yeah. She said, oh my God, that is you. You've always done that. So we mapped it over to his company. And then we took his values and his unconscious, how it validates the values, and made it the company values.
Oh, wow.
And so he gets to be the poster child for his company. Number one, it brought the passion back.
Yep.
And it's just like, I don't want to leave this place. This is amazing. And two, what a lot of companies do is we're going to hire a consultant, and he's going to tell us that our company is here for the greater good of the planet, our employees, and the whales. And our purpose is to be value driven.
Yes, totally. Total bullshit mission statements.
Oh, yeah.
And they're so whitewashed down so that everyone can get behind one little inch of it. And yes.
And we'll ask our employees what they think. It's like, excuse my language, the employees. They're valuable and they should be there. But if it's you founded the company, it should be made in your likeness. And that doesn't mean be pig-headed and just do things dumb ways. But if you're the engine that drives this, build the company around it and surround yourself with totally brilliant people smarter than you.
100%. Yeah, that share those values. You can't teach in the values. And I love that exercise that you brought your client through, because I'm speaking in personal experience. I went through a similar exercise with myself last year, and we looked at my values versus how I was running and living my business. And boy, there was a big disconnect. And I was just like, oh, this makes total sense as to why, like you said, the passion was missing and things weren't clicking. And so spent a lot of time realigning and doing some of that deep work. And like you said, then it brought it around. I became excited about it and started to attract the right people that were resonant to that calling.
Absolutely. And the thing I like best about it is for most people, they have three faces. They have the face they show the outside world. And sometimes that's, look at me, I'm pretty or smart or brilliant, or I'm lost or I'm broken or whatever. Then they have this other face, which is, this is who I think I am. Then they have the actual who I actually am. And those people that figure out who they actually are don't need to delude themselves anymore. And with enough strength, that's what they show the outside world. And they know their purpose. They know who they are. And people get attracted to them because they feel safe around them.
Definitely.
Because most people are trying to juggle three different things going on all the time.
Yes. And I don't know your personal experience, but for me, I didn't fully come into that. And I would say probably until late 30s, early 40s. That was a long run for me of consistent effort trying to find it. Like, it wasn't like I was walking around deluded. It was like really hunting and searching for it. But it took a lot of deep personal work to get there.
There's a word that I love. It's called model. And the reason I love the word model is this is the best model I know. Because even Einstein, I mean, if he was still around saying, okay, with the string theory, I had it wrong, I'm a loser. If he totally bought into, I am perfect and I got it right. And I think we have the sense of this is the model I know.
Yeah.
There's probably a better one out there. And I can almost guarantee, Jay, we've just met 11 minutes ago, maybe 12 minutes ago. And this person sitting in front of me is way better than Jay from 5 years ago. And this person sitting in front of me probably sucks compared to the Jay 5 years from now.
Yes,
like
right.
We're always improving.
Yes.
And as long as we have an open mind to, hey, I'm doing my best, but there's probably better. And everything I know is just a model. And I'm looking for other data points to help me make that model better. And it'll never be perfect.
Yep. And I think acceptance with that middle ground of where one's at, because I think one of the things that I'm most disappointed about Western capital culture around would be that constant, you're not enough, work harder, build more, get more productive, more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we can oftentimes make ourselves wrong or lesser when we're not at that ideal full ripeness stage coming out of that chrysalis. And so for me, that's something I need to pay constant attention to in my own mental practices is like, nope, everything's good right now. I'm enough now. And let's build from here.
The thing I like about Einstein, don't understand any of it, but the thing I do understand is E equals MC squared. So he took this super complex thing and distilled it down. Still don't know what it means. I know what it represents, but I could plug in the numbers and get an answer out. And I was thinking about that, and I came up with this concept of what if there were two coins that describe our life? One coin on one side has happiness, that if we measured happiness every single day, if things are going wrong, that happiness number is going to go down. And on the other side of that is negative stress. If that number's too high, something's wrong. And on the second coin is love. How loved and loving do I feel today? And on the other side of that is fear. What's my level of fear? And if you could just check those four things every day, because if something is wrong, then you can say, what would make me happier? And you always come up with an answer. Sometimes it's ice cream.
Right. Yes. 100% right. I love that.
So share one of your Jedi mind tricks that you share with your clients that simplifies this complex thing we call life.
Yeah, I think it's believing that we need to fit in somewhere and kind of plug into, like you're saying, those old models or existing structures or whatever it might be. And I think we're so habituated in how we approach problems sometimes that when we get stuck and we're trying to form a business model that works for us or figure out our branding, and all of a sudden having somebody say, well, actually, bring it down to the values like you were talking about. If we can bring those base actions down to values, we can really help people understand their callings more effectively. So somebody could be a speaking coach and they might have tips on that and formulas and whatever. But then when they get down to the understanding of, hey, what I'm really doing is helping other individuals find their own voice and speak their truth into humanity, it's a totally different understanding. And so if we can get back to that's the game changer for me.
Absolutely, 100%. I think it should be by the time we get out of high school, I'm not sure we can do it earlier, is uncovering your purpose in life should be absolutely a fundamental thing.
Yes. And if go ahead. Sorry.
No, finish. You had something important.
Yeah, no, if I could just soapbox for a second, like it drives me insane that we are not teaching emotional intelligence and mindfulness as part of our general curriculum right now ahead of some of the other things that we're teaching. And I think that's part of the reason why we don't get to that understanding as well, is that we're not holding that space for it. And it's just easier and more fungible to just plug people into the existing structure.
Yeah, and I think what somebody needs to do is to just smash the education system
I know.
to smithereens.
I know.
I had this gentleman that I interviewed on the podcast. He runs Gibson Snowboards. And so he had gone down to Teach for America. After graduating at Hopkins, good old Baltimore institution, went to Teach for America. And he had this grade 5 class. He said some of the people, this one kid was obsessed with black holes. So he's reading university texts to understand black holes. And there's other kids that can't read at all. And he's supposed to teach them all. And so after about a month and a half, without telling anyone, he drops the curriculum. And he says, I want to introduce you to this thing called a love project. Oh. Whatever you're passionate about, just work on that this year. And I'm going to do the same. And he brings this snowboard that he built in high school that was kind of crappy. He said, I'm going to redesign and rebuild this. And so that's what he does. And then he goes for spring break, goes snowboarding and almost kills himself because his snowboard sucks. And he comes back to class and says, you kids need to continue your love project. I'm going to put mine aside so I can help you out. And one of the kids sniffs out that he's being a wimp. Yeah. And he says, if you're not doing yours, we're not doing ours.
Love it.
And the kid called Clayton shamed him into doing his. Yeah. And so he ended up starting a snowboard company that ships snowboards around the world. But the joy of it was that he only had them for that one class, but they started doing better in all of their classes because they had this one place of following their passion and learning because they wanted to as opposed to they had to.
Totally. And how many of them, 30, 40, 50 years, however many later, are going to be telling someone a story someday and they're going to talk about that year and what that teacher said and how it impacted their entire lives.
And we all have that one teacher, right? Yeah. That we go, Mr. Higgins was my teacher. That was like the most amazing teacher. And this is my idea to redesign education, is that most teachers put me to sleep. Mm-hmm. What if we got the best history teacher for a grade 7 class in the country to do a 15-minute lesson, like a TED Talk about something? And then instead of hiring teachers, move them over to being facilitators.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it's easier to facilitate than it is to teach, but you get somebody that inspires. I want kids to go home and go, oh my God, did you know? Totally. And be that excited. And the teacher helps deepen the learning, would totally change education. And if I had kids and, the government doesn't want me to have kids, by the way. No, if I had kids, all I'd want for them is this, to have a deep thirst for learning, to be able to read really well, and to be able to communicate flawlessly with people, like public speaking and just connection. And then after that, it's like, have a nice day and go live your life. And they'd be self-directed folks learning what they need to learn to create what they want to create.
I love your vision as well. And I think we're going to start to see that. I think we're already starting to see the initial inklings of that. But boy, I think it's going to accelerate with the way the quarantine, flattened the world even more so and brought people together. And to your point around the educational system, boy, I would love to see entrepreneurship woven in there somewhere as well, because I feel like we're raising people to be employees. And, it's a decades old model that's already, served its time, and we got to reinvent.
And beyond decades, really.
Totally.
And so, yeah, absolutely. Because the reality is, if you're having a kid today, I'm not sure if it's 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 different careers in their lifetime.
I know.
And if they're self-directed entrepreneurs, they get to design their own path.
Yes, 100%.
So what's kind of brilliant is Muhammad Yusuf, he did the microloans. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not as familiar with him, but I'm familiar with microloans.
So he's the guy that started it out. Yeah. And one of the things he noticed in Bangladesh was when he gave money to men to start their small businesses, that they got a little bit successful and then drank and hoarded away. But if they gave that money to women, they built community and built families and expanded their businesses. So I think entrepreneurship for everybody, but especially women and girls, because they are pretty freaking awesome. And I think I've got this movement I want to start. I've been threatening to do this for a really long time. It's like humans first. Screw the animals. No, humans first. Because what I would do is say, hi, I'm a performance coach. Yeah. And then I'm this, then I'm that, then I'm this. And the last thing that I will not mention is I'm a human being that has a heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so we figure out all the distinctions first. What if we started and said, hi, I'd like to connect with you at a heart level and connect with your humanity first. And oh, by the way, I happen to do this.
Yes.
If we started that, it would change the planet.
100%. I love that thought. And it's been fascinating to me when I've lived in different places around the world. One of the things that I started to learn to watch for was how soon into an introductory conversation does somebody ask or tell, what they do. And what I noticed was, I'm from New England originally, and I noticed that was very soon in the conversation. It was usually, possibly right after name and maybe where you live type of deal. And then, so I was raised in that way. And then as I moved to other places, I realized I was the only one sometimes that was pushing that agenda. And so I started to learn to shut up about that and try to have that be one of the last things that I would say or ask, because to your point, I learned so much more and connected so much more authentically to that individual.
Absolutely. What came up in my mind was there was this silly movie called Austin Powers, and they had this Dr. Evil character. And there's this scene where this guy calls him, Mr. Evil, and he goes, I didn't go to evil medical school for 7 years. Call me a doctor. So even Dr. Evil wants to go career first.
Totally.
So, Jay, this has been a joyous conversation. Before we part company, 2 things. Even though you're amazing, you have a negative voice that comes inside your head on occasion to sabotage what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Pray tell, what does your voice say?
Great question. Mine is somewhere around like running out of time. I kind of always feel like I'm behind a year or two around where I should be. And it's kind of like needing to clean out the old before the new next thing can come in. And so I'm usually struggling or grappling in my mental loops around where I am in that, and if it's enough in the new direction, or am I being too stuck to the old? So that's kind of what's at play for me, is like, hey, am I doing the right thing right now?
Brilliant. And one final thought from you is anything you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners that would they can implement immediately and go, man, Jay's a really cool guy.
Right on. I would say something back to that arc around understanding the why behind what we're doing. And so as an example for me, I used to introduce myself in saying that I do business coaching. I help entrepreneurs build their businesses up. But when I got to a better understanding of what I was doing, that statement changed to, I hated working in corporate. I left the law to follow my passion and open a restaurant. I lost everything because I didn't know how to think like an entrepreneur. And so what I do now is I help coach people how to make that transition so they can follow their passions without losing everything. And so once I got that, it just changed everything about how I connected to my work. And so for individuals, what I would say is spend some time thinking about those stages of your life and what was going on for you. I bet you can go back to your high school or junior high days and realize, oh, wait, I was actually playing the same role back then or doing the same things.
Oh, yeah.
And connect those so that it's a life purpose view versus I think we can get too caught up in the present, and which is rare, but I mean, too caught up in the modern to-dos of like checking off to-do lists and getting things done versus understanding the why and infusing that with our work.
Brilliant. Jay, thank you so much for being on the program. Fascinating conversation, and thanks so much for being a guest.
You're very welcome. I appreciate that, and thank you for the opportunity. It's a wonderful interview. You asked great questions, and I really hope your listeners and audience got a lot out of today's conversation.
Brilliant. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. And if you're looking for more tools, go to my website at nolimitselling.com. I've got a free mind training course there that's going to teach you some insights from the world of neuro-linguistic programming, and that is the fastest way to get better results.